So when I put out this invitation to come speak about book bans, you mentioned that you wanted to speak a little bit from your own personal experience growing up.
Yes. Yes.
So what was your experience as a reader, as a child, looking for books, and what kind of censorship did you face?
hmm So most of my teenage years was all of my teenage years was before this rise in like actual political book banning of 2020 and 2021. So my experience has just been like within my family and my church community and all of that. The what you might call like soft banning. And so when I was 11, my parents joined a highly conservative fundamentalist church, and it has ties to some different kind of cult-like organizations. It's the same group with that the Duggar family has their ties with. So like I've met the Duggars a few times, all of that, and a lot of my friends were raised very similarly to the Duggars. My parents were like kind of on the outskirts of that kind of cult mentality because they wanted me to go to college and they cared about all of their children going to college. So we were never like fully a part of it just because the rest of the group didn't like that my parents put an emphasis on education, not just for children in general, but also their daughters. So that was kind of the environment I was in. My mom wanted to read everything that I was interested in before I read it to see if it was appropriate. She was not able to because I was a very fast reader and I'm the oldest of six. So she was kind of busy. And that's how I sneaked my first romance novel at 13. It was a Francine Rivers book, who's a Christian inspirational romance author, and was kind of blew my mind as to what adult like Christian romance could even be. And so, what that looked like on a practical level is one, my mom wouldn't let me check books out of the library if she felt like there was going to be more than a few vague kisses in them. And so, I definitely sneaked things when I could. And then, also, for example, some of my best friends, we were all encouraged to read a lot of historical fiction. And so there's this book my friend had about Lady Jane Grey. And before they were allowed to read it, their mom went through with a Sharpie and she would mark out like anything involving kisses or like anything that had like any sort of sensual imagery, anything like that. And I mean, it was not going to be that explicit at all. So we would grab a lamp and we would hold the page up to the lamp so that we could read through the Sharpie because obviously it was taboo. So we needed to know why it was taboo. And I was homeschooled. When I was in 11th grade, we were in a co-op for like world literature and history. And the teacher used to be like a teacher before she had kids and started homeschooling her own. And so the co-op is like when all these moms get together and they teach the subjects that they are best at. So all the kids like get a pretty good like education. And so she really knew what she was doing. However, before we read the Odyssey and the Iliad, one of the other moms in the group was like, "Hey, I want my 13-year-old daughter to be a part of this, but I'm deeply uncomfortable with her like knowing anything about sex or whatever." And so the poor teacher had to go through all 12 copies of the Odyssey and the Iliad and mark out with the Sharpies on all copies anything that talked about anatomy, could possibly be sensual or sexual in nature. And it was absolutely ridiculous. And I think all of us in the class knew it because we would get to a passage describing a battle, and it would be like Achilles thrust his sword and it, pierced this warrior just above his left nipple, and nipple would be marked through. And it's just like this is not, but like so that was class. A lot of us had feelings about it, but we were 17, so we're like, what were we gonna do? And then I remember going to homeschool conferences where some of the speakers would, pull a book out and like read a passage out loud and be like, "Can you believe you're letting your 12-year-old read this? If you have this in your shelves at home, go throw it away, go burn it." And it would scare a lot of the parents because they hadn't read the book, or at least not all of it, or the passage was probably pulled out of context. And so this was the environment in which I spent my teenage years. And so it was very harsh on literature, and there were very strict expectations of what we could and couldn't read, what we could and couldn't learn out of a book.